Joining me right now, Caleb Silver, Editor-in-Chief of Investopedia. Good to see you.
Good to be with you.
So you have so many different, Investopedia is such a magnificent thing because you can see what people are searching. You can sense their anxiety and their sentiment. So let's start with sentiment. How are people feeling? Because the first part of August was tough, but the last, 10 days, let's say, seemed a little better. I don't know what kind of time period it looks at, but what would you say?
Yeah, we like to look week to week, and investors are having their clash moment. Should they stay or should they go? Riding great returns, right, up until about the beginning of August, then that big sell-off, and now riding returns again. So caught in the middle here, wondering whether they should go back all in on stocks, or whether they should be a little bit more careful and stick to some of those safer banking products.
So, because there's the anxiety, does the anxiety index, is that the sentiment index? Is that sort of one and the same?
No, we survey our newsletter readers every 2 months to ask them how they're feeling. Bullish, bearish, indifferent.
Right.
What are you afraid of? What are you most excited about? What would you do with an extra 10 grand? We always ask them that question, and then week to week we're looking at what they're searching for. So when we look at the sentiment survey, they're as bullish as they've been all year, but they were reluctantly bullish coming into August. Reluctantly, even though we've had such good gains by then. The AAII sentiment survey, that's the American Association of Independent Investors, backed away from its bullishness. It was as most bullish as it's been all year, backed away in the last couple of weeks, just as the market returned again. CNN's Business Fear and Greed Index, that is sort of neutral to bullish right now. That tracks a lot of indicators. And then when we look at the big institutional fund managers, most bullish as they've been all year.
Yeah, it's interesting because June and July were pretty great. And so some of those may reflect, even though they came out in the middle of August, some of those may be reflecting some of the great news we'd seen. But then August was sort of choppy and it's lighter volume, so it doesn't necessarily have the same conviction to those moves. But September and October are not necessarily the best months. Let's get to what people are looking for. I mean, there was a time, I remember everybody was looking up foreclosures or, I know you and I have done so many different stories. Bear markets,
but not lately. Despite the bullishness, we had a lot of people searching for how to trade a put option.
Oh.
And I think that's related to the next thing people were looking for, which was how to explain The Big Short, the movie. Why? Because Michael Burry was out a few weeks ago talking about shorting the SPYs, shorting the Qs. I think that gets in people's heads a little bit because he was right at least one time before. So I think those two go together. Also, some safety searches that continue. Best money market accounts. You can still get 5% in a money market account.
Right.
Sounds pretty good if you don't know what's going to happen in the future. The high yield savings account, same thing. And then the Minsky moment. What is a Minsky moment? And I assure you, Nicole, it is not a painful dental procedure.
Yeah, well, you know what? I don't. What's the Minsky moment?
Minsky moment is when you see a complete crash or spin out in the market based on the actions of one person. Again, maybe related to Michael Burry, maybe related to the fact that investors think something could take the legs out of this new rally.
The black swan event.
Exactly. People are just paranoid about what might be coming next.
I had so many things going in my brain for Minsky. In the meantime, as you talk about high yield savings accounts, we are still seeing some inflows there, right?
Yeah, it's definitely some inflows.
Where's the money moving?
Yeah, well, cash has been king, still $5.5 trillion in money market accounts. We have seen outflows from stock ETFs and mutual fund ETFs. We look at the ICI for that. That's been happening consistently for the past several months, even though the market's higher. More inflows into high yield bonds, especially corporate bonds, and then tips getting some attention. But now that we've had this latest jobs report, now that we've had the latest PCE report, maybe people are thinking maybe we've seen the terminal rate and the Fed may chill here going into the rest of the year.
Look, I mean, you're seeing the long end of the Treasury yield, coming up, Treasury yields coming up on the long end. I mean, that inverted yield curve, at least it's instead of, it's narrowing and getting closer now. Let's talk about also the 52-week highs. And it's exciting. It's exciting when your stock hits, you may still be down in the long term, but isn't it exciting when your stock hits a 52-week high? It's a good sign, isn't it?
Yeah, I was starting to look for all-time highs. I like to bring you the all-time highs
let's
here.
see some
and
of
there's
those.
like 15, but I couldn't think of any of those companies that were widely held and widely traded. So I looked at where the momentum has been for the past year, and it's in stocks that you and I were talking about 15, 20 years ago, right? Adobe Systems, Cisco Systems, remember that? That was one of the great tech leaders in the late 90s, early 2000s. Fastly, ADBE is at a 52-week high, Alphabet is at a 52-week high, and TGX, we talked about this a few weeks ago with the retailers, absolutely crushing it at Marshall's, absolutely crushing it at the TJ stores. So those are 5 stocks that are hitting 52-week highs. There's about 35 of them up there at those highs. We like stocks going up and to the right. Momentum is here with these stocks right now.
Yeah.
We'll see if it continues.
It's funny because you have like tech, you have AI in here, you know, a little at least, right? Google would go into that for sure. And, you know, old names like Cisco Systems, as you mentioned, I mean, Dell did great today. And
Dell, AI related? Right?
I mean, I'm not saying it's a 52-week high, but it's a good name that got a nice pop. When you look and when you talk about the retailers, people are now speculating what will happen over the holiday season because you get this jobs report that looks pretty good. I mean, most people who want a job probably have one. Even though the unemployment rate went up, people are looking. Maybe they're trying to pay off the credit cards from summer. I don't know.
Yeah.
You have any thoughts on what happens over the holiday season, how consumers may behave, or any market thoughts?
Consumers have this way of talking about how fearful they are and how worried they are about the economy, but we're professional spenders in this country, so we keep spending no matter what. Record high credit card debt,
yes.
We don't care. Record high APRs, we don't care. As long as wages are steady, wages decreased just a little bit or slowed a little bit in the last jobs report, but wages have been there, jobs are plentiful, there's still 8.8 million of them out there. Consumers are going to keep spending. It's what they spend on that may change. We were spending so hard into services, maybe it's now basic goods, brace ourselves a little bit, see what happens this fall, but holiday season shopping is going to start way earlier than it used to.
Well, that's part of it too, because we were talking about Prime Day and how great Prime Day was, but you had all the other retailers saying, hey, we have some great sales here, and that's what happens. You know, we always used to think of Black Friday right after Thanksgiving, but it starts, I mean, holidays, they already have Christmas trees out in Walmart at this point now, so you're getting bombarded with a little bit of everything, and consumers will have to pay. A lot of them are still living paycheck to paycheck. They said 61% of the people are living paycheck to paycheck, but part of that could be a spending problem.
It's the spending problem, right?
You know what I mean? You know, they're not saving, and granted, some people make less, and that's a serious issue, and they're fighting inflation. But you have over $1 trillion in credit card debt, and they're paying over 20% on those credit cards. You cannot have running up, and that's something that I think, you know, when people start to realize what they owe, that might go into the fear index.
Plus student loans, they're going to have to start being paid back interest this month.
Good point on that.
Student loan payments next month. That's $350 on average for about 44 million borrowers.
Yeah. Just final thoughts here. I mean, we know that we've seen the outflows from the stock ETFs and the mutual funds, like you said. Still, you know, fixed income seems to be in favor at this moment. AI, there's still a lot of talk about excitement around AI and the financials, the forgotten financials. I don't know. Any sector thoughts? Bitcoin's gotten pummeled. It's down 13%. Can go nowhere fast every time they get a little
That was fun, that little ride when we thought we might get approval because of the decision on Grayscale there. So you have some far end of the risky assets are doing well. NVIDIA and the AI stocks are doing well. They're around and centered in the technology that will power the next decade. Chip makers have had a little pullback there, so we've seen that happen. But look at the companies with the good balance sheets. Those 5 stocks I mentioned at 52-week highs, the rest of that list, all really strong balance sheets, pretty consistent cash flow here, some of them paying pretty decent dividends. This is a time for high quality stocks to perform, probably across sectors.
Yeah, and dividend payers are always, obviously, not always, but often a good way to go if you're picking a good company because you get paid to wait. You know, for example, we were talking about one earlier, Verizon, that had over a 7% dividend payout. I mean, I'm seeing oil, you know, today at $85. There's a lot going on. Caleb Silver, always so glad you're able to join us and bring all the research that you get from Investopedia. It's a wealth of knowledge. Caleb Silver of Investopedia. Thank you.